Hi, everybody. David Noor back with you with my business partner, Jen Cords. Hello, Jen.
Hi, Noor. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. Nice to see you. For our audience, welcome to another episode of our Intelligent Growth Live. Each week, typically Tuesdays at noon Eastern, unless there's some
This is our scheduling thing.
like unplanned event. Like, okay, but enough about Silicon Valley Bank. Um, unless there's some sort of unplanned event, Tuesdays noon Eastern is when we're always live, and our passion, our conviction, our focus is fundamentally on not growth at any cost, but how do we help global clients really think about growth strategically, really think about growth in a not a gut feel intuition, but intelligent, hopefully data driven approach. And how do we do that in a profitable way? Again, I was president of a company back in the I'm dating myself dot bomb era, and the painful lesson we learned is you cannot buy something for $2, sell it for $1, and make it up on volume. And that basic fundamental idea seemed to still elude a lot of organizations who still somehow value eyeballs and impressions are great. I don't want to take anything away from that, but if it doesn't translate, your efforts doesn't translate into a focused problem you've identified, a market opportunity you've identified, and you've built a compelling solution for it, for which the motions, marketing, sales, and customer success, not just drive the initial sale. Jen and I have chuckled about this, that even a blind squirrel can find a nut, right? Not just the initial sale, but each subsequent opportunity to upsell, upgrade, cross sell, really deepen the value of the relationship, in many ways reinvent the relationship, is what becomes critical, particularly to recurring revenue business models, subscription economy players. And that's really the essence of our focus. So in a lot of conversations, we're still seeing two scenarios. Either senior executives, board members, and investors don't know the right questions to ask when it comes to RevOps. Or, regrettably, a lot of leaders, dare I say old school leaders, still see RevOps as highly tactical. I need someone to deal with my HubSpot. We need a Salesforce admin. Can we get like, and there lies the dichotomy, the two ends of the spectrum. One end doesn't know, the other end doesn't know it doesn't know.
Well, and on that point, David, it really depends on how the leader and the organization views operations in general. A lot of organizations are still viewing ops, the whole ops function, as a cost center instead of viewing it actually as a force multiplier. And when the organization or the leader views it as a multiplier of business and what they do and how they do it, that's when you can really shift and turn the tides of leveraging it in a way that exponentially impacts the growth of your business.
And on that note, just a quick housekeeping on the format. So Jen and I are going to talk and compare notes and ideas and give you insights into this particular episode. Right after this session, we'll be in our forum community. So norgroup.com/forum. And we'll share ideas. We'll share the list of metrics that we'll discuss in this session. So whether you're joining us live, encourage you. We're live on LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube and Twitter, the Noor Group accounts. I would encourage you to jump in with your questions, comments, examples, ideas. If you listen to the podcast afterwards or you watch the recording of this, encourage you to come join us. norgroup.com/forum, where we'll share ideas, perspectives, references to various research and topics that we're going to talk about. So Jen, let me kick us off. Boston Consulting Group several years ago did a fascinating research that showed, I just want to rattle off some data points, 100 to 200% increase in digital marketing ROI, 10 to 20% increase in sales productivity, 10% increase in lead acceptance, 15 to 20% increase in internal customer satisfaction, and 30% reduction in go-to-market expenses. These are just some of the metrics that they captured of organizations who strategically embrace RevOps. And as you said, it's absolutely led from the person at the top. And it is just that. It is a strategic view of how do we remove friction? How do we accelerate traction? How do we align the wants and needs of our buyers with us, our team as sellers? So talk a little about the series, the mini series that we've created, and the 3 kind of mini episodes the audience is going to hear from us about in the next several weeks.
Absolutely. So the mini series, we want to focus on the strategic value of RevOps and what does that mean for your organization. So it's, like I said, it's a 3-part series. Today, we're going to be focused on metrics that you need to be keeping your eyes on, both from a leader as well as an individual contributor perspective. Our next episode is going to be on dashboards and how they help, how like the views that you should be creating and what that means for your organization. And then finally, we're going to be talking about the return on spend and the investment that you're making in the technology and the people and your processes. How do you track a return on that? And then also how do you measure and accelerate that income or impact and the outcome that investment can have on your business. So it's just a 3-part series where we're hyper focused on RevOps as a strategic function and really want to reinforce the value that RevOps can bring when it's truly implemented in its truest form, which is the unification of your ops functions and breaking down some of those silos that historically have existed within ops and in organizations to date.
Okay. So on that note, again, this episode is focused on very specifically metrics. I think, Jen, we've captured 8 overarching metrics. I want to highlight for the audience that, again, we'll post this in North Forum if you haven't seen it as well. This is our customer lifecycle journey maturity model. And over the last 18 months, through a plethora of interviews, research, obviously client engagements, we've identified these 7 unique phases. We've built on it since then, in that recurring revenue model companies need to go through in understanding not just what the customer journey should look like and what the needs of those customers you're trying to engage and influence and ultimately have them buy, but really then create impact, material impact in their business to give them a reason to renew, to give them a reason to not just renew, but hopefully expand and extend the relationship. And these metrics are, Jen, I think you mentioned very holistic. So we're looking, as the offensive coordinator on the entire field, or we're looking at the entire landscape of not just what we need to understand our buyers do, but align the way we sell to the way they buy. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. And it is when we create when you create the metrics and the dashboards related to this customer lifecycle journey, it gives you that macro view, but then it also allows you to dig into a micro view into each one of the pieces to see what levers you can pull to improve those metrics along the way and improve that experience for the customer in the end.
So we will go, I'm going to rattle off all 8. And then, Jen, why don't I ask you about each one? And several of them, there are nuances that we've captured as well that I think would be really useful for the audience to hear about. So here we go with the 8 metrics that we're going to talk about in this episode that we believe will be critical to the success of and a truly a return, an ROI on your RevOps investment as a strategic asset in the organization. Number 1, customer acquisition cost. If you're blind to what it's costing you to acquire these customers, or you don't have your finger on the pulse of that, and it's not a George Foreman grill of set it and forget it, we've seen that it fluctuates based on various channels. So we'll talk more about that. Number 2, obviously ARR, not just the annual recurring revenue, but some nuances there. 3, the customer lifetime value. Again, recurring revenue models aren't ideally one sale, transactional sale, and we're done. You're thinking in the long-term viability of that customer. So we'll come back and talk more about that. 4, cycle time. Cycle time is going to be critical in not only each phase of that engagement, but holistically, the entire cycle. We'll talk more about that. Win rate. I refuse to believe anybody wakes up on any given day, decide to fail. The problem is many functions in an organization don't know how they're measured. And specifically within a customer engagement opportunity, how many do you win? How many do you lose? And why is that? So we'll talk more about win rate. 6, customer churn. Customer churn. So they bought once. What's the likelihood of them repeating, recurring revenue, versus those that choose to go other directions? Make no mistake about it. Customers always have a choice. Even if they don't have a choice, they'll find one. They'll take a less superior one based on the experience. So we'll talk about customer churn. 7, pipeline velocity. Pipeline velocity, not just what's in there, but what's the duration of those opportunities moving through. It highlights how well do we understand the psychological, the tactical, the need of our buyers in each phase. And what are we doing to ensure that those needs are met before we move on to the next one? By the way, that has very little to do with your end of quarter. Did I mention it's end of the quarter? What is it going to take for you to close this piece of business end of this quarter? Right? That's not it. Pipeline velocity. We'll talk about that. Last but not least, 8, which is forecast accuracy. Forecast accuracy should not be a coin toss. And if a deal keeps getting pushed quarter after quarter after quarter, it starts to question how well do you really understand that business, that opportunity, and the quality of that relationship. So those are 8. They're certainly not the only 8. Those are the 8 that we believe are critical in getting and keeping your finger on the pulse of your RevOps efficiency, effectiveness, and impact. Jen, anything to add to the 8 before we dive in deeper into each?
Nothing to add to the list of the 8. I would just add that the reporting that you do needs to come at multiple levels. So you do need to have an executive, a management, and then an individual contributor view of these 8, because they will mean different things to each one of those roles.
That's a great perspective. And the other thing I just want to remind executives of, when there's lack of information, people make things up. They'll fill in the blanks themselves, good, bad, or indifferent. So we're big believers of 3 types of kind of making this data available and transparency of it. One is push. Monday morning before our all hands meeting, push these metrics to the people that need to know, to the team, so everybody's on the same page. 2 is pull. We love, again, metrics that people can go and pull themselves. And if they have access to them, we'll talk more about those in dashboard episode. Last is event-driven. So think of triggers. Think of events that may happen that will trigger a need for certain types of metrics. I've never been a big believer of you sit there and let me just send you, 50 different metrics of which you're like, oh, uncle. Versus here are 3 to 5 that are critical to your role, your function, your contributions to the bigger picture. So metrics becomes really critical in timeliness, relevance, and actionability. I have a bias for action. You show me metrics, I'm going to ask, what should we ascertain from this? What should we do next? Timeliness, accuracy, actionable. So let's jump right into them. Customer acquisition costs. Jen, what is it? Why should I care?
Customer acquisition cost at its core is how much is it costing you to get that net new name? Marketing is responsible generally for creating new leads, and how much are they spending to get that attention and awareness? So in our customer lifecycle journey maturity model, it's the first phase, and it's first and second phase of awareness and engagement. How much are we spending and what are we doing to actually drive somebody to want to engage with our content, give us their information, which then allows them to move down that funnel. So it's that cost, not only from how much money are we outputting, ads spent, attending events, et cetera, but also the internal cost of how much work is it taking for marketing to do the marketing campaigns, send the emails, do the follow-up, data cleanse, et cetera.
And are you measuring 1 and 2 or 1 through 4?
For customer acquisition cost?
Yeah.
It is really 1 through 4, but where it starts is 1 and 2.
Got it. So we've also seen different version of this. Why would there be, I like one source of the truth, single truth. Why would there be multiple numbers in that kind of CAC information?
A lot of organizations aren't looking at total costs. They're looking at actual just total spend, which are two different things. And the spend could be, we spent $500 on a Google ad, but how many hours did that take? How much did the design assets cost to create all of that? So it's the actual costs related to all of the touch points that a person goes through to become a customer or prospect.
So here is a bonus or a tip for a client. Think of the total customer acquisition cost, not a transactional one. So what Jen's alluding to is not just the capital or the money investment, but we also look at time, effort, human capital, like how many people had to be on this project or initiative, or the time it took the graphic designer to create that. And so really thinking through the total customer acquisition cost is really critical. Jen, where have you seen to be the best source of data for customer acquisition cost information?
Generally, it's going to be housed in your Salesforce. You do want to set up campaigns in your Salesforce, and you do want to be tracking that information and have clear guidelines on who's involved in every type of initiative. And so your Salesforce becomes your single source of truth, and you really should have your Google Ads and any marketing automation system all tied in there so you can have that clear view.
Beautiful. So there's the customer acquisition cost. Number two, obviously the annual recurring revenue. That's a pretty straightforward one when, clients are, especially if you're responsible for the revenue target. If you think of CRO, CMO, the senior leadership team is talking about their ARR on a daily basis. Talk about some of the nuances that go into an ARR conversation.
Well, one of the things to focus on is that retention and revenue in general, there's gross retention or gross revenue and net revenue. And when you're looking at your ARR, you really should be looking at your net revenue. And your formula for that there is a formula for that, and it's new logos plus expansion logos minus contraction minus churn, and that's your net. And so if that number is a positive, then you're growing your revenue. If it's a net, you're kind of at a plateau. And if it's obviously a negative, then you're in a decline and you need to figure out what levers you need to pull. So when you're looking at your ARR, don't just focus on the gross or the top line. You really need to look at your net, because that's where you're going to see the actual difference in your growth.
So I want to really appreciate the fundamental difference between gross revenue retention and net revenue retention. So that recurring revenue that you hold on to each month after taking into account cancellations or downgrades, that's another one that a lot of people don't think about. I bought a 50-seat, initial PO. We end up only using 20. I'm downgrading as quickly as I can. So you got to account for that downgrade versus net, which is the existing customers that you retain, over a reporting period, typically measured. Typically we see monthly, typically we see annually, and it takes into account, as you mentioned, everything: cancellations, downgrades, upgrades, cross-sell, and it should delineate a real number, a real finger on the pulse of what's happening. So gross versus net is a critical one. Let's move on to the customer lifetime value. What is it? What does it mean? Why would I care?
The customer lifetime value, you don't want them just buying one time. To your point earlier, that becomes highly transactional, and that is going to have a lot of churn. So you're going to be spending a lot of time, money, effort of bringing in new logos. I think the stat out there right now is it's 8 times easier to get deeper value or an expanded contract with an existing logo than it is to get a new logo. And so that's 8 times the cost that you're saving by increasing the value with an existing logo. So customer lifetime value, you want to be the partner with them versus just doing that transaction. You want to help them realize how they're better off with you than without you, and truly check in with them, help them get the most from your solution, and continually look for ways to improve that relationship.
Thank you for that last reference to relationships. One of the things we coach clients is logo is very easy to kind of transactionally think about. Oh, we need 50 more logos. Last time I checked, logos have no relationships with each other. So you're not acquiring that logo, you're deepening. In many ways, you're reinventing that relationship to be more intentional, to be more strategic. If you think about where and how we choose to continue to spend our money as an individual consumer, I'm not going back to that mechanic, once because, okay, so you did an oil change. I keep going back to the same guy. By the way, full disclosure, my guy's named Q and he's Arabic. Come, my friend. He's a fantastic guy. Q is a great guy. And we keep going back to Q because of the trust and the reliability. And he does great work. And I don't have to follow up on follow-up. And he's busy, but he does really good work. And he gets to know me and my family. And so our lifetime value with Q is increasing because of that consistent kind of understands, that consistent reliability, that consistent, he not just fixes it, but he's also in there and says, listen, I just noticed this. This is going to cause you an issue. We can either fix it now or we can fix it a month from now. So that predictive, that demonstrated vested interest in your success, those are some of the attributes that I believe absolutely bring people back for that customer lifetime value, not just that transactional acquisition of a logo. Talk about renewals, upgrades, cross-sell, because that's also really critical in understanding how effectively you're addressing that lifetime value of the customer.
Absolutely. A lot of organizations are really focused on the sales and marketing metrics, and they don't really pay attention to customer success, or they only start paying attention to customer success when they're losing business or they have a high rate of churn. But evaluating why people stay, why they buy again, understanding how they're adopting, all of those things come into play when you're trying to sell into new relationships. And so the upsell, cross-sell comes from having continued conversations with that customer and having that relationship with them, that you're not just checking in once a year when the contracts due, but having QBRs, quarterly business reviews, having check-in calls when they submit a ton of support tickets, making sure that they know that you're there to support them and their long-term goals versus just being that vendor to them.
I remember years ago, dating myself, running track or swimming laps. And you knew that an 800, a swim race was so many laps in the pool. One way I tend to think of the customer lifetime value is the number of trips they're willing to take around this infinity loop. And what are you doing to ensure that they consistently see the value and they keep coming back to not just renew, but I've worked with a team this past week, as you know, who, something like 30 to 40% of their net new business comes from existing relationships who've moved on to new companies. So they go to a new company and they realize they have the exact same issue. They bring these guys in and they're adding logos. They're adding net new relationships for this company because of that incredible experience, because of that. So that's even, I think, customer lifetime value expanded because you're not just at one client. Now you're taking them into multiple clients. Let's move on. So far we've covered customer acquisition costs. We've covered annual recurring revenue, customer lifetime value. Talk about cycle time. Number 4. What is it? Why would I care?
Cycle time not only is your opportunity cycles and how quickly somebody moves through that sales process, but it's also the marketing side of that funnel. How are they being generated? How many touches does it involve before they raise their hand to move further down the funnel? And then in your cycle time, you also need to be looking at your ratio of conversion over time. So marketing's generating a whole bunch of names, but those names are being tossed over to sales. How many of those is sales accepting? And then what is the resulting action from sales now touching them? And so looking at that entire cycle and how quickly they're moving through and the conversions at each point is really important to understand the efficiency of your marketing, as well as your targeting. Are we talking to the right people?
I think just hanging around you and your team and the questions you guys ask, cycle time really seems like the miles per gallon of our cars, right? The efficiency with which we move a lead through the funnel till it becomes a paying customer is an example of that cycle time and really that the conversion rate also of how effectively are we able to convey a compelling value proposition for them, again, be in the right place, right time, right need to convert them to not just initial customer, but then really nurture it for it come full circle. So conversion rate is a critical part of cycle time?
It is, yes. And when we talk later in our list on pipeline velocity, that conversion number will come back up and we'll dive deeper into it. But yes, conversion is a critical piece to cycle time.
Beautiful. So number 5, win rate. I win some, I lose some. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that old adage?
Well, what are you learning when you win some and when you lose some? So not only looking at your win rate, let's just say your company has an 80% win rate, but why are you winning? Who are you going up against? What does that buying group look like? So when you analyze your win rate and you analyze your wins as well as your losses to understand where they're going and why they chose somebody else over you, that helps inform not only your product development, but also your marketing to narrow that aperture on who you're targeting and how you're talking to them. But also maybe a new competitor has jumped into the space that you were unaware of before, that they had that product or feature set that you are now competing against. And so it allows your product marketing team to create battle cards, for example, for your salespeople when this company or opportunity presents itself again.
I tend to think of win rates like the teaching hospitals do with postmortem, right? So not just what went well, what didn't go well. And I'm, again, dating myself. An old sales manager broke it down for me of, if you think about 10 deals, 10 opportunities, 3, you're going to win because you're the right fit. You have the great relationship. You're the right price, right positioning, all those things. 3, you're going to lose because you don't have those things, right? So that's kind of almost understood. It's the 4 in the middle that makes all the difference. And if you find and better understand, based on this data, where and how you're not a good fit and you disengage quickly, now you've got a much better chance of tipping the scale in your favor of, we're going to continue to focus on, again, not just ideal customer profiles, but as you and I have talked about, ideal relationship profiles that are very much in line with our values, our unique value, what we're capable of, what we're not capable of, and really aligning expectations. So it seems like win rate is that postmortem. What did we do well? What didn't we do well? How do we continue to learn with battle cards, with new competitors, with where we are and we're not a good fit?
Absolutely. And your win rate, the analysis of your win rate is a lagging indicator, but a leading indicator is taking that insight and information and creating listening events in your marketing and in your sales. So when you are presented with a similar person or relationship, you're able to identify them more quickly and know how to handle them better in the future.
Sounds great. So we're moving on to number 6, which, by the way, the win rate also heavily impacts the next one. Number 6 is customer churn.
It does. Yeah. Customer churn, this again is something that a lot of companies aren't focused on because they think customer success and the customer experience is just a given. Whereas customer success and what that customer goes through needs to be engineered. You need to intentionally think about what and how you want that person to interact with your company. So your customer churn, that's understanding, why are they leaving? What problems did we not solve for them? What greater value could we have given them? And it's those learning moments of how could we do better? And so then you can apply those learnings to your existing customers and continually reduce the number of people leaving because you're addressing the problems as you go.
So customer churn, again, can also highlight, just to build on your comment, one company we're aware of had something like a 70% churn. Yes. And you and I were just besides ourselves because what you start to peel back the onion, And what you realize is the sales team is doing a fantastic job selling all that's possible, but the clients don't have the capability, the competency, the processes, the tools to bring all that to life. So they were too small of organizations to realize the impact from this solution. Hence, they would buy it for lower dollar amounts, and come a year, somebody would look back and say, we haven't done anything with this thing, and they would not renew. And what came out of that analysis was they had no business chasing small businesses because those companies didn't have the capability to get in-house to really get the most. And this obviously SaaS company didn't want to be in the professional services business. So they decided to abandon. They right-sized their organization to abandon the small, selling team. And now they're focused on at least on mid-market and above. And that's an example of what that in-depth analysis around a customer churn can help you extract. So moving on to number 7, pipeline velocity. Why does it matter how fast I take people through this lifecycle journey?
Well, it matters to know if you're going to hit your number or not. So looking at your entire pipeline from top of funnel all the way through your selling motion and knowing how quickly they're moving will help you understand the levers that you're pulling now, where in the forecast and where in my revenue is it actually going to generate results. So for example, if your pipeline velocity is 90 days, anything you do today is not going to actually impact your pipeline or any deals for another quarter. And so that's not, if you need revenue quickly, that's not a lever that you can pull because your cycle time and your pipeline velocity is too long. You need to find a way to shorten it. So understanding the number of touches on the marketing side, understanding how long it takes in a sales process, understanding your contract, that helps you work backwards to understand what activities you need to do and the volume of leads and correctly sized leads you need to generate to effectively hit your number.
So pipeline velocity, again, gives you, as Jen mentioned, not just a lagging indicator. We're increasingly much more attracted to leading drivers. So what should you extrapolate from the data you have now to really start anticipating future steps? And how am I best configured as a sales organization? How do I best arm my channel teams to really understand that buying process and really make this a living, breathing enablement engine, if you will, to help marketing, sales, and customer success really operate efficiently. Moving on to last but not least, forecast accuracy. I know this is a huge issue with investors and board members and the executive team. Talk about forecast accuracy and what really impacts it in the RevOps world.
So forecast accuracy really comes down to your sales and opportunity health and looking at, are deals stalling? Why are they stalling? How long are they stalling? Do we have a bloated pipeline? All of these things allow you to right size the forecast, but as well as your pipeline to accurately know if you're going to hit your number or not. And it also allows you to have those learning moment conversations with your sales reps, to your point earlier, David, about if this keeps pushing, how well are we understanding or qualifying the people we're having these conversations with? And how well are we understanding their business and how our solution can help them? And so really looking at that forecast accuracy, not only from a revenue and a sales perspective, but from the marketing perspective as well, because they're supposed to be in lockstep as you move forward.
And again, I think we're all products of the advice we take. And an old leader drove into me years ago of a low, medium, high, right? So there's certainly some things that are within, all of our controls, but the more you understand, Jen mentioned, about the process, about that buying process, about what they need, when they need it, particularly the more complex or the more enterprise it becomes. If it's a quick, transactional opportunity, that's one thing. If it's a long, committee-driven, multiple evaluations, truly an enterprise, particularly B2B enterprise sale, the more you understand, the more finite details you kind of look into and invest in and extrapolate for yourself, the more it gives you confidence in that low, medium, high. And our joke was, if I get out of bed, I think I can hit my low number. If I do my job, I'm good at medium. if all the stars align, I'll get to high. And that was our way of communicating how well I understood, how well kind of my diligence was going in understanding my quarterly, my half year, and my full year pipeline. So go ahead.
I also just want to mention that your forecast accuracy is not just on your net new deals, but it's also on your renewals and your customer success side. So looking at the number of check-ins you're having, the health of those deals, are these customers having issues? Are there a whole bunch of open support tickets that they're not getting attention on? So that customer success side of the forecast accuracy is really important as well, which goes back to our customer churn metric that you need to be keeping eyes on as well.
So question of you is, I know we're embarking on, for audience, we're embarking on probably the biggest and the most in-depth kind of research journey we have in not just helping and really understanding from our clients, where are you particularly strong? Where are you struggling? And by the way, if we asked your peers and your channel partners and your customers, what's your confidence level that they would say the same? So that's certainly one of them. Jen, my question of you is on these 8 metrics, and for our audience, we'll recap them again. And again, we'll be in our NOR Group forum, norgroup.com/forum right after this session. I would encourage you to come join us there, where we talk about a lot of actionable, what to do and how to really implement these ideas. So my question of you, Jen, is obviously one size doesn't fit all. So, is this something that I know we're trying to gather data on, but if I'm one type of SaaS company, I can't really effectively compare and contrast myself on, say, cycle time or customer churn with another SaaS company, right? Or there's some nuances that would delineate us.
Absolutely. A lot of these metrics will be determined by the stage of your business. So if you're pre-funding or a Series A, Series B, some of these metrics aren't going to have much meaning, or you're not going to have the data yet because you're still figuring out what your velocity is or your win rate. And at those early stages, generating net new logos and retention, your goal is to get all the logos. It doesn't matter. So early stages, it's just get all the logos. Later stages, you want to be more fine-tuned and you want to be looking at these logos. If you're an enterprise business, you really should have this dialed in, and you should be able to see these as both leading and lagging indicators of how do we generate more and how do we get more value from the relationships that we have.
So I'm gonna encourage our audience. We are embarking on research into these metrics. Would love to hear your perspective. We are setting up an engine to capture this. If you're so willing to, share your metrics, we can leverage them anonymously and share. We're trying to get to a level of sharing cross-industry and competitive peers, and really help gauge, almost like a scorecard approach, to not just our lifecycle journey maturity model, which we're working on now, but key metrics that you should be measuring. Here's a range of other companies in your space or in your stage of business development, as well as for large enterprises who go from selling traditionally a very CapEx intensive product or service to now more of the subscription or recurring revenue model. So I would encourage you, and we'll follow up with our research, but we're committed to really gathering cross-industry insights into some of these metrics that are critical. And as we talk about this mini series with the dashboard and the spend, it'll become really important to get accurate, get a believable, get a transparent view of these metrics that you can openly talk about. These are the levers, very similar to a P&L. These are the levers that we believe marketing, sales, customer success, the executive leadership team can in fact impact with a confidence level that these are the metrics that are relevant to us. They're accurate, and the team is focused on them. Jen, final comments on these?
Well, I was going to ask you, since you have a lot of those conversations with boards and executives, out of these 8, where are you hearing that most of them are struggling?
Their biggest. So let me just go down. Customer acquisition cost. I believe it's myopic. I think they're capturing some of it, not the total, and not over total amount we're spent over total number of customers. That's also misleading because think about it. FedEx as a customer took us a whole lot longer than Bob's bicycle shop. So generically, one size, I don't think it fits all. I think we need to go a little more granular than that. ARR is, again, commonly understood, commonly discussed. I think some of the nuances of gross versus net is a challenge. Lifetime value seems to be I think a guessing game. I think, again, if you haven't been around long enough to see a customer buy from you over some period of time, you have no idea what the possibility could be. So cycle time, they kind of get win rate, they kind of get, and again, I'm going to go back to the overarching challenge. When everybody shows up at the same meeting with their own data, it screams that there's not a confidence level in a single source of the truth. And when we have arguments, ad nauseum about attribution, we touched it. That lead came from, something that we touched versus no, it really was that local rep's relationship or that channel partner's relationship that uncovered that. So we're not as impactful in understanding kind of the win rates and understanding the why behind the customer churn. Again, good people, good intentions, but I think there's some nuances. And for our audience, what I've observed, Jen, to kind of answer that question as well, is really bright executives, really well-intended executives dilute their credibility with their peers and with their investment partners, with their boards, when they don't know this information or they can't defend it. This isn't about showing up at the next board meeting and regurgitating a book report. This is about understanding not just what's happening, but why. And for you to seek to understand, you have to ask better questions. You have to get further insights into, as Jen mentioned, not just what's happening, but why it's happening. And more importantly, what's our response to it? So Jen, I'd say holistically, the challenge that I continue to sit on with leadership teams is accurate, kind of reliable, consistently reliable, believable data that is transparent. And we don't get into us and them. We get into this is a we challenge or a we opportunity. How do we address it as a leadership team?
Makes complete sense. And one of those things that getting the insights from it is also to leverage and break those barriers and actually leverage RevOps as its true function to give you that data-driven environment that most leadership teams are looking for.
So just to recap for our audience, if you joined us late, we're in the middle of a series. We're focused on the strategic value of RevOps. And we're breaking this down into metrics. That was this episode's focus. Dashboard, we'll cover that next week. And then spend. What are you spending on, particularly in challenging economic times? Why are we spending it on certain things? And more importantly, what's the return? I've never shied away from spending. What I do want to know is what's the return on that investment, on that really a viable opportunity for us to become more efficient, more impactful in what we do and how we do it in terms of marketing, sales, customer success. So again, as a quick reminder, Jen and I will be in our private online community called the North Forum. I encourage you to come join us where we're going to talk about some actionable steps. So we'll go through all 8 again, and we'll talk about, where and how can we, in fact, really impact some of these things. What should you be looking for? What can you do to impact these things? That'll be valuable. I also want to put plant a seed for Jen and her team. Great idea these last couple of weeks in offering. That was my Siri telling me when I said a series, Siri picked up on that. So your X-ray, your RevOps X-ray, I'm really fascinated by it. Talk a little about what that is and why are you and your team excited about the ability to quickly get in and really help clients figure out the top 5 challenges?
Yeah, we're really excited about it. One of the things that we've learned from all of our engagements over the past 18 months or so is that senior executive teams don't necessarily know what questions to ask, and they're not in the tactical day-to-day operations to intelligently speak to it or even intelligently hire someone else to help them. And they're trying to change the way they view operations to be that force multiplier versus just the tactical fire drills. So the X-ray it's an opportunity for my team to get in and look at your entire tech stack and quickly help you identify where you have challenges, where you have unnecessary friction, and give recommendations that you either can have your internal team implement, we can support you in doing those things, or it's just information that if you're not ready to address those challenges, then at least you now know. Awareness and knowing what's broken is half the battle. So it's an opportunity for us to get in and make the best recommendation for how you can grow and scale your business in an intelligent fashion.
So again, as a reminder, for the right clients, right opportunity, where there's an interest, no cost to you, 1 week, our team will focus on your RevOps environment with sysadmin access, mutual NDA. We'll uncover at least a handful of challenges we believe are the biggest impediments in helping you scale, helping you build, grow a mature RevOps organization. You can go to norgroup.com/RevOps-X-ray, X-R-A-Y, to learn more. And we're live each Tuesday at noon Eastern to really share intelligent growth tips, techniques, proven best practices, and really creating that profitable growth, that intelligent growth. As a quick recap, this episode was focused on the strategic value of RevOps. We focused on specifically metrics, covered 8, if you didn't capture them all, unique metrics that we believe will dramatically impact your success. Number 1, customer acquisition cost. 2, annual recurring revenues, ARR. 3, customer lifetime value. 4, cycle time. 5, win rate. 6, customer churn. 7, pipeline velocity. 8, forecast accuracy. On behalf of my partner, Jen Cordson, and I, thanks for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next Tuesday at noon Eastern, same place. Come join us in norgroup.com/forum to continue this conversation and make it more actionable. Thanks, everybody, and see you next time. All the best. Bye-bye.